Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome back, Wild Souls. If you ever felt like there's more to this reality, more to who you are, why you're here, and how you can truly awaken to your highest potential, then today's episode's for you. I am sitting down with a truly remarkable guest, Keisha Dodd, a psychologist, therapist, and a visionary co-creator of the Inherence Process. With over 16 years of experience, Keisha blends psychology, energy work, and deep spiritual wisdom to help people reconnect with their truest self. But her story goes even deeper. She's not just a therapist. She's a consciousness explorer, a healer, and she's the author of You Are a Dream of the Universe, a book that challenges us to wake up to our divine nature. In today's conversation, we're diving into some profound and eye-opening topics like how consciousness plays a role in healing and personal transformation, the hidden wisdom of trauma, and how to move beyond it, the ego. Should we dissolve it, integrate it, dance with it? How to recognize and trust your highest guidance when it whispers to you or when it shouts at us. The illusion of separation and why we're more connected than we realize. The role of self-love, presence, and intuition in awakening our fullest potential. Get ready because this isn't just a conversation. It's an invitation to step deeper into your journey of self-discovery. Welcome to the show, Keisha.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I'm really excited. You have some really fun experience and things that you've been working on. So if you don't mind, let's just dive into it. But before we get into some of your groundbreaking work, I would like to ask you, you've studied both theology and psychology. How do you see the intersection of spiritual awakening and psychological healing?
Well, I think they are both intimately connected. It's all one whole organism and being, and the being has the psychological part and the spiritual part, and it all blends together. It's only kind of separated in our external world. There's a psychology school and theology school, and you go to church and you go to work, for example. But on the inside, everything blends into one. And at least when I went to theology school, I saw that more and more of the leaders in the spiritual world, religious world, are open to what's going on psychologically with people, that it's not just only the divine intervention, good or bad, but it's also just regular processes that influence how we feel on the spiritual level. And many times we have some psychological problems inside and we projected on the spiritual world, and we think it's the spiritual, but actually it's some kind of unhealed trauma that we don't know about. So we project it on the spiritual world, but once we dive inside, it turns out that there's no higher power here. It's just something that needs attention.
That's interesting. I like that. It's really about the spirit being on this human journey and really integrating it from both sides of it, because they can have different versions of themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, I love how you said that.
Yes. And also, when I was writing this book, at some point I had this realization that what we call spirituality, actually there's only one definition of the spirituality on a deeper level. And no matter what kind of tradition or spiritual thought you study, you can find that every single one aims at the same thing. And my definition of the spirituality is to let go of everything that is important, known, valuable, detach, in a sense of letting go. So when you are on the spiritual path, you're letting go of things. You're letting go of your past, you're letting go of your trauma, you're letting go of your ego, you're letting go of something, all the attachments to whatever seems to be valuable or indispensable in your life. When you let go of it, it's the moment of spirit, it's the moment of spiritual thing. And that's something that we have to learn, because when we are born, we don't have this ability to let go. We have the other ability to grab on. So look at the child.
I think that's part of the game of the humanness. I feel like you just summed it all up so nicely, like we don't really need to talk about anything else. But that truly makes sense. I think that is the ultimate goal of why we're here.
Yes. And different religions and different schools of spirituality, they have different techniques and different theories and different visions how to let go. But actually, it's all the same.
Yeah.
Just let go and be free. Don't hold on to anything.
I spent a lot of years seeking and delving into different religions and different spiritual work. And it's exactly what you just said. Every time I either, like when I got back from Tibet or I immersed myself in something, I was like, it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm seeking for, because it's all the same. The outcome, it's all the same. Can you talk a little bit about your inherence process that you developed? Like, what is it and what inspired you to develop this transformative method?
This was a process. I mean, before we came to developing the final steps, meaning I have a close friend who is a therapist. She lives in Poland and I live in the US. And we connected at some point and we started talking, and there was really something that we just connected on the level that we both wanted to dig deeper and learn more and discover more. So we were both so passionate about it that we started meeting regularly online. She in Poland, me in the US. We met every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes for 2 hours, sometimes 7 hours, and we were just diving into the depths of whatever it is, consciousness, awareness of spirit or universe, whatever you call it.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Exactly. And she has some nice abilities too. She's intuitive and she can see some things, and me too. So we both really blended our insides. And it took 7 years, I think. We were doing this for 7 years. And she's a therapist and I am a therapist. So at the same time, we had clients. And so we were dealing with the real client, human material when we were working with people. And then we met and then we worked and then we looked deeper. So this deep observation resulted in this process that it's, how to say it? Okay, maybe one more thing. I always said, working with people and being interested in the human awareness, I mean, since I was 7, I always had this question underneath, always, it cannot be that complicated. It's impossible that it's so complicated, this whole psychological and emotional stuff. It can't be that complicated. There has to be something simple underneath of all of it. And this was my main drive to get deeper and deeper and deeper to this one mechanism that would show up. And it showed up. So that's the inherence process. And the inherence process is a process that has 6 steps. And every step, what it does, it positions your awareness. I don't know if it makes sense, if it's going to make sense, but I will try to explain. It positions your awareness the right way, so you detach from whatever you're attached to on a deep subconscious level, and then you connect to your core, to your essence, to your inner child, as I call it in the book too. And when you feel the real connection, you really feel like you are in a different dimension. You suddenly have a different vibration. You cannot connect to the problem that you had before, and you look at the problem and you don't know what it is and why you paid attention to it, why it was so important. And it's all about, what came out from this research is all about where your attention is turned, but on a deeper level, not on the external level, on a deeper level. And in order to get to that, the person goes through the steps. It turns out that every single problem, I mean, so far what we observe, every single problem that people have comes from the attention being attached to a wrong thing. The deeper attention should be connected only to your deeper self, to the essence, to who you are, to your soul, if you can say that, the conscious awareness. And when it's not, it immediately becomes a source of emotional drama and problem. So no matter what kind of problem in the external world you take to work on, when you go deeper, there is this one mechanism, literally one, the proper turning of the attention. But you have to really experience it. It's hard to explain until you go through the process, because it's not difficult. It's very simple. There's only 6 steps, and you are in your inner home, and you can feel it. It's not an imagination. You can feel it because the physiology changes, and people have physical healings, spontaneous sometimes, even if it's not intended. So something is happening when you really connect to your core.
That makes sense. So, because that was going to be my next question. How does expanding one's consciousness really contribute to the personal healing, and how does your adherence process facilitate that expansion? So it's just working the process. You have found a process that helps facilitate people through that for whatever their individual healing is.
Yes, exactly. When you go through the process, what you discover, it's not the origin of your trauma. It's not how it happened and when it happened. This is irrelevant, because underneath of all of it, there's even deeper level, and that's where the real problem is. And the real problem is the personal attachments to the problem, not the problem itself. Problem is never a problem. Problem wouldn't be a problem and wouldn't haunt us if we always a personal attachment to wanting that problem. And of course, we don't know it. We don't realize it. It seems to be unfair to say that, because on the external level, in the logical mind, we don't want to have a problem. We don't have to suffer. We don't want to be in trouble. Oh,
okay.
Yes. But underneath, when you go deeper, you find that there is nothing else. Nothing hurt. Nobody hurt you. Nothing happened to you. There is, even if in the external world it looks like this, but underneath there is always you and your will, and the will to hold on to it. Once you sever or separate the will to hold on to it, it just flies away. You don't have to heal the trauma. You have to heal your own attachment to the trauma.
I love it. I had a guest on the show, Heather Lee Strom. She does some work, and it's unique and different, but it's powerful. And she says, healing's not work. It's easy. It really is easy. It's not work. And so that really stuck in my mind. And I'm listening to you, and it's like, this is a different iteration of healing isn't work. It's easy. We can do it. So you've done some blogging in the past, and you did a blog. It intrigued me, and it was called The Lack of Abundance, or The Abundance of Lack. You talk about abundance, with lack being the abundance and excess. So I feel like that sort of just fits into what you were just talking about. And I know that, right, lack and abundance are big, like people put a lot of energy and focus and attention on that topic. Do you remember that blog?
Yes.
Could you talk to that a little bit? I was just really, truly intrigued by it.
Yes. Well, when you really think about it, we live in an abundant world. There is abundance of everything. There is abundance of love, and there is abundance of suffering. There is abundance of lack, and there is the abundance of something really great. And again, the only thing is where you put your attention to. If you attach your attention to the lack, you have abundance of lack, but it's still abundance.
Right.
It's not lack.
When I was reading it, I'm like, yes, it seems so simple, but it wasn't simple until I read it. And I was like, this is fascinating.
Yes.
So I'm glad I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to weave it into the show or not. So I'm glad that I got that weaved in, because it really did strike a chord with me. In your book, You Are the Dream of the Universe. It suggests a deep connection between personal existence and the cosmos. How can we tap into the universal connection for greater self-awareness?
Yes. Well, how I experience it and how I see it is that the deeper you go, the the bigger the world, that the essence that we try to connect to is like it is like a mini universe. It's like a small representation of the whole universe. So whatever is happening on a huge scale in cosmos, the same happens on a very micro scale deep inside of us. Well, I see it as the inner child or the essence or the soul, however we call it. And that's the piece of the universe. That's the small representation of the whole big thing. And that's the only thing that we actually really have access to. So if you want to connect to cosmos in the huge universe, you have to connect to the piece that's inside. That's the whole universe in a small, very, very small, little tiny particle or whatever it is. I don't actually know exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. I heard someone, he would have said that was, it's an electron. Like when you kept talking about the small particle, I went back to his explanation and I was like, oh, Jim would call this the electron. What core message do you hope readers take away from your book regarding self-awareness and inner harmony?
The connection, the conscious connection with the deeper self is the root of everything. It's the basis for our existence. It's the only thing that we have, and everything else like life, relationships with others, with the world, and careers and whatever we have, it's just a reflection. It's like the external stage on which we play the inner world. So the more you connect it to yourself, to know who you are, immediately it's reflected in the external world in the form of events and life happenings, whatever it is. So if you want to, if we want to change something in the outside world, just we have to turn, go in there, figure it out, and it will be just effortlessly reflected in the external world. It not should be hard to change things in the external world, but people try to change things outside without going to the real stage where it's happening inside.
Now, you've touched on these terms a couple of times already. Your work emphasizes the integration of the inner child and the parent to form what you call the inner adult. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on these concepts and their significance in personal development?
Yes. So how I see it is that our self, the personal self, it has two components. It's the inner child and the inner parent. And when we come to this world and we are small children, we don't have the inner parent structure developed yet. So we are children, we are full of life and enthusiasm, and we want to explore everything and this bundle of energy, happy about everything and wanting everything. That it cannot self-regulate. So it needs the external somebody, mom or dad or whoever it is, to help to regulate this. So for the first 20 years, more or less, there is this external inner parent that helps the child to develop and to figure it out who he or she is. And more independence happen when child grows up. And at some point, the parents should step to the side, and the person who is adult now has the inner parent. So it's capable of regulating himself or herself and being the mediator between the inner world and the outside world. But what happens is that parents are people, and people are not perfect. So many times what happens is that we don't have a good parenting. We're not receiving good parenting at home. There are different family dramas and dynamics, and we leave home and our inner parent is not fully functioning. So we still are kind of like children looking for a parent, and we want to emotionally attach to other people, to missions in the world, to careers, to some cause or whatever. We want to still connect and emotionally connect to it, and so we can, how to say it, so we could make up for the things that didn't happen properly in childhood. So that's why we have emotional dramas. I think that adult people who are adult, really adult, not physically adult, but internally adult, don't know what emotional drama is. But when we have emotional drama as adults, meaning that we are still not adults inside, because the inner adult that I'm talking about is when the inner child and inner parent are fully integrated. The inner parent is really functioning well, taking care of everything that's on the inside. So there's no emotional leakage trying to connect to something outside for help. Then you become an inner adult, independent, empathetic, loving, but not dramatic. There's no drama happening. There's no fear. There's no lack of safety. There's no feeling of loneliness. This is something completely strange to a person who is emotionally, internally adult.
That makes sense. In your experience, how crucial is self-compassion in the process of inner healing and personal development?
Well, that's totally crucial. Yes, because self-compassion is when you acknowledge that something is painful, something is difficult, something is problematic, something is inconvenient, something is not happy. So first it needs to be seen, then it needs to be acknowledged, then it needs to be accepted. And then when healing, that's the basic for healing trauma. So when we do that with our own stuff inside, then the compassion, self-compassion is needed. It's very needed. Can't do it without it.
Do you think that self-compassion is something that comes easy for most people, or it's just person by person?
It's not easy, and we should not mistake compassion with pity and being a victim. Being a victim, it's not self-compassion, and sometimes people mistaken those two.
And yeah, that's a big difference.
Yes, we are trained in our Western culture, especially. We are trained to be brave, to suck it up and to fulfill all the tasks and to make your parents happy, your teacher happy, your boss happy. So we have no time to actually sit and ask ourselves how we feel and have compassion for that inner part that sometimes needs attention and sometimes needs to be told that everything is okay. And we have no time for it because, it's changing. There's more and more of awareness now, but so far, no, the external world was more important.
Yeah, I feel like it's just in the early stages, like it's coming to an awareness.
Yes.
And, it's people like you, your work, podcasts similar to these that are, trying to get that out there and introduce those different messages.
Yes.
And the culture does make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
You introduced EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, in Poland. Would you explain what EFT is? And do you see EFT as a bridge between emotional healing and energetic or spiritual healing?
Yes. Emotional freedom techniques. It's being known in the U.S. since 90s of 20th century. So it's been like 30 years. It's tapping. It's emotional acupressure. It's emotional acupuncture, as they call it, and it's energy work too. I found it the easiest way to release trauma and stuck emotions. I tried many different methods that are out there, and EFT is really, really the simplest. And anybody can do it themselves. You don't need to spend millions on therapy. You can just do the exercises. There's plenty of them on the web, and they are very easy, and they bring instant relief. I encountered this technique when I lived in Chicago. I think it was 2005. And I was studying theology at that time, and I was looking for some books on money because, students always look for some kind of extra money to earn. So, maybe I can read something. So I was looking on Amazon for books and some other pages, and suddenly I saw this website. I went to this website, and there was some session recorded, and it was the EFT tapping session. And I did the process with them, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? The tears are pouring down my face. I don't know even why. So I was so intrigued by this, and I started studying more and more and more and more, and it was like, wow, I really like it. And then in 2006, I went to Poland and to visit Poland, and I was talking to my friend who was a psychologist too, and she said, "Well, this sounds interesting. Hey, tell me more about it." So she got hooked immediately too, and we did a first workshop in 2006, and that's how it started. Nobody knew in Poland before about this technique, so by accident, I kind of brought it. But I guess there's no accidents. Now, all those years later, there's a big foundation, the EFT Foundation in Poland. That
Wow.
there are 3 great girls that do EFT trainings, professional trainings, and there's more and more EFT therapists coming out from those trainings. So, yeah, it's developing nicely.
Well, so it's such a perfect example about how you came across something so innocently. I love EFT. I think it's extremely powerful. It's funny when you fly, you'll sit down and someone's sitting there and they're doing that thing. And I'll be like, oh, a tapper. Then how you just took it in that conversation and look at how far your personal influence that was, we'll say, unintentional in a lot of ways,
Totally
has now built these institutions and changed so many people's lives when it became, and then it obviously became more intentional.
Yeah.
That we do all have the ability and power to influence in ways that we just don't really realize how big it is at the time. So I wanted to point that out because, a lot of times people just feel like they don't have the value, or how can I make a difference? And that's just right there, perfect example of it. So you're originally from, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Krakow, Poland?
Krakow in English, yeah.
Okay. And you've been in the States. How has this cultural transition influenced your personal and professional perspectives? Has it made a difference?
It did. Yeah, it did. It did. I came to the US 21 years ago. So at that time, Poland was in a different stage of development, if I can say that. And at that time, I didn't like Poland. I thought, I don't want to be here. I'm leaving. So I came to the US, and soon after, I got enrolled into theology school. When I came to the US, I started having some experiences that I didn't know what it was, but then I learned that those were mystical, spiritual experiences. I really didn't know. I mean, I felt it was really good and something important was happening. It was not scary or anything, but I didn't know what it was. So after I found out, I have some profound experiences, and the change of the hemisphere, probably, and the environment and culture and geography, probably all kind of contributed to it. And then I went to the School of Theology, and that was my first shock, because suddenly I found that those teachers, those professors at school, they are actually nice. So that was my first shock, because in Poland, at that time, it's changing now, but at that time, student was treated as enemy.
Oh, wow.
So you had so you were by design, by default, you as a student were enemy. Your job was to prove that you are not stupid and that you can actually know something.
Wow.
So there was this weird dynamic going in, and I came here to the US, and I have all those professors and serious people, and I felt like they were serving me to become a good student. They were helping me to become a good student and learn everything as I was supposed to. I didn't have to prove anything. It was their job to make sure that I'm a good student. So that was the first shock. And then, of course, the mentality of people in the US is different than in Poland. People are more open, more chatty, more positive, thinking positive more. There were more opportunities and possibilities to to learn things, to explore things, because people were more open, not so close-minded as at that time in Poland. Now it's really different. After 20 years, when I go back, it's like, whoa, who are you? And what did you do with Polish nation? So it changed a lot. So yeah, I like it now when the Poland is probably the internet and easiness of access to information from all over the world and exposure to different cultures. It's all probably influenced the how the young people are now.
That's interesting. And I do think that the internet and that mass communication makes a difference. I'm always honestly amazed and humbled at the international following that we have with the show. And, countries that I just wouldn't expect, but, they're consistently in there all the time. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Many spiritual traditions, they talk about transforming pain into wisdom. How do you view trauma from a consciousness perspective, and how can people move beyond it?
I'll talk a little bit how I see trauma from the mechanical point of view. So how I view trauma is that when we turn experience into trauma, subconsciously, of course, what happens is the emotional flow stops. Because the emotion is something that needs to be constantly flowing. It has to flow. It's like a current. It's like a river that must flow all the time. And then when there's some experience that it's shocking and stressful too much and the body cannot process it, it stops, the flow stops. And that's what trauma is. There's a stuck emotion and there's always stuck image attached to it and stuck belief coming from it and some symptom in the body. It's just frozen. There's a lesson in it. When we want to unblock the trauma, there is a lesson. Sometimes when in the moment when we cannot process the emotion and we do it later, year later or 25 years later, we try to process this stuck emotion, there is some lesson in it. And most of the time, the emotional flow couldn't flow at that moment and got stuck because we have something unresolved underneath. It could be generational trauma. It could be generational trauma, meaning we come to this world with already predisposed to reaction, to certain reactions in certain situations. It could be something in the family dynamic that happened. And usually when we look at the trauma, the emotions that are stuck with it and how we feel and what it does, and we peel and we peel and we peel, there's always something to learn about your own self, about your history, about your family, or about generations, or about the world, or about life, or about God. There's something to learn because at the moment it was unavailable to understand it. So it got stuck and waited for the better moment to unpack it and learn what's in it. What was the question? How it's connected to spiritual?
How do you view trauma from a consciousness perspective, and how can people move beyond it?
Okay, from the consciousness perspective. Yes, so from consciousness perspective, when we are stuck in some kind of event that we call trauma, we are unconscious at the same time in that area. The moment we unpack the trauma, release the emotions, suddenly we understand what happened. Suddenly we understand the bigger picture. And from the consciousness point of view, the consciousness is present and it expands in that area.
So then it just releases it and then you grow and you evolve from it.
Yes, exactly. From other points of view, when we talk about consciousness, how I see it is that humanity is the species that has the self-awareness that it's evolving. And the self-awareness must be learned somehow. It cannot be given to you. You have to acquire it by your own experience in your own life. Sometimes the depth of the universe is so inaccessible to the self-awareness that it can be pulled down to those depths only through something negative and something traumatic, something something difficult, something painful, because the consciousness, the awareness wouldn't go there on its own to explore the depths of who we are, or how everything functions and how it builds, because it's too light. Consciousness is really light. It's very high vibration. It's very light. And the depth, the foundations of how our whole universe and who we are very, very deep. So the consciousness, it needs to be pulled somehow deep down to explore those depths and learn about them. And sometimes it can be done only through pain, because the pain will pull you. The pain will pull you there, because when you're in pain, you're right there at your foundations. And then suddenly you feel what's right, what is important, right?
That's very powerful.
Yes. So that's from a bigger perspective. Now there are other theories like the soul purpose, right? So the soul has some kind of lesson and experience that wants to experience being in the body and on this earth. So it chooses some certain experiences. So yeah.
What strategies would you recommend for individuals struggling to dissolve some of those limiting beliefs that they formed in childhood from these traumas that seem to snowball until they get resolved or we evolve?
Yeah, I always recommend EFT. That's my favorite simple method that people can do on their own. You can address any issue doing EFT, something that happened yesterday, something that happened when you were 5, or even something when it happened before you develop the conscious awareness, because the body has the memory, and sometimes something happens really early, like when you're 1 or when you're still in the belly of your mom. You can even release those traumas from the body memory doing EFT. You don't have to logically know what happened, but the body has the memory. The body has the information. When you're getting in touch with the information in the body, you can tap it away too. So I would start there.
And I agree with you. It's easily accessible and it's affordable, because you can basically go online. I mean, it's all right there. You can get the charts and stuff. And it's, like you just said, it's one-stop shopping. It roots out the problem and it fixes it all at the same time. So yeah, nicely done. Let's move to self-realization and the ego. That ego.
Ooh.
Many spiritual traditions talk about transcending the ego. From your perspective, should we seek to dissolve the ego, or is there a way to integrate it in a healthy way?
Yes. Don't dissolve your ego. No.
I feel like it was created for a purpose. It just has managed to get itself out of control.
Yes. Well, how I saw it, exploring the depths, it's that the ego is actually the inner parent structure. It's if you imagine that the soul is coming to this world, and the soul has no boundaries, and it's so expanded, and suddenly it comes to this physical reality, and it needs to focus. It needs to have suddenly like a laser focus to be able to focus on physical things, on physical material world, and it cannot do it. It's like you have, for example, you have a blurred vision because let's say your eyes cannot see, and you see everything blurred, and suddenly you put nice glasses and everything is focused. So that's what ego does. That's what the ego structure does. You are just this boundless energy, but it needs to be formed and focused so we can actually focus on the physical reality. So we cannot survive without ego structure on this planet. What happens is that the ego is it's the processor. That on one hand, it's supposed to process the internal world of emotions and all that, and on the other hand, the external world of the physical world. So it needs to process. It's the communicator. It's like an interface, and it gets in trouble because it gets mistaken. It mixes up things. And it also holds beliefs that we get from childhood, from messages from parents, from culture, school, and from parents, from family. So how I see it is that the healthy ego, it should be like a container that it's transparent. So it physically exists and it's doing its function, but it's transparent so you don't see it. So at the same time it is and it's not. And that's what healthy ego is. It's like clean glasses. They do their job. They help you to focus. They help you to regulate and see what is. But you actually don't see because it's clean. You don't see the glass. But now imagine that you put some stickers or some chewing gum or whatever and try to see the world through it in a clear way. Impossible. You'll be all frustrated and you will have bad beliefs and you'll be looking at something beautiful outside, but you have some film on your glasses and you actually see a monster and you say, oh my gosh, this is such a monster. Because what you see, it's the stuff on your glass and not the real thing. So transcending the ego or getting rid of the ego is nothing more like cleaning the ego. You can't get rid of it. You cannot transcend it. Transcendent meaning you don't look through the dirty glasses anymore. You just look through nice, clean glasses that you're not aware you have them, but they still function. Because without them, you can't see anything in this world, in this physical world. So that's how I see the ego. It's
okay. Well, I feel like the ego has really gotten a bad rap.
Yeah.
And it's an integral part of how we were created energetically. It's like it's an integral part of the human machine functioning.
Yes.
And you did a really nice job of explaining that. And then sometimes it just gets programmed or someone messed with its programming and it can get out of control, or sometimes it gets blamed for, things that the ego is to own. So it's interesting people's view and perceptions and answers to a question like that. Self-awareness, you have brought it up multiple times today. It seems to be a really important part of your work.
Mm-hmm.
How does one incorporate self-awareness into their daily life? Like, how does simply being present in the moment contribute to a more enlightened, conscious existence?
When people are self-aware, meaning are in better touch with themselves, they immediately have a better connection with the outside world, with people, with what is. There's less and less projections, less expectations. So it helps a lot to be connected to be self-aware of who you are, what your function is. You know better what kind of decisions to make in the moment when you need to. You have better intuition, so-called intuition. You just trust your gut, so-called, because the gut usually is the gut, the other brain, the inner child, the intuition, the lower brain. It's better connected with everything that is than the conscious mind. So when you are self-aware and your self-awareness is more connected to the gut, let's say, then you have immediately better connection with everything. But now, it almost feels like the real perception and the real connection is through the other brain, through the intuition, through the gut brain, and the brain in the head is just a processor that it's supposed to only process the information that you receive from outside world through intuition, what we call intuition. So the information comes all the time, and the brain is supposed to be connected with it, decoded, trust that it's right, and then make the right decisions and figure it out. That's what the inner parent would do. Listen to the inner child, figure it out, and then carry it in the world. But sometimes the ego, the parent, the thinking mind is disconnected. It's the dictator. It knows the best. It wants to take control over everything. And it's not, usually it doesn't end well. So the self-awareness is when you're connected to the deeper self. The deeper self has the connection with everything that is. And the job of our conscious brain is to learn it, is to be aware of it, is to be attentive to it, is to decode it, is to trust it. to trust it. The trust is the thing. So when you trust it and you don't need to control everything and know everything, then synchronicities happen, or things like this. By accident, I met this friend and I started talking about EFT, and suddenly there's EFT Institute or EFT Foundation in Poland 10 years later or 15. You just trust the God. And that's the job of the inner parent who is here to regulate those processes, not to control everything.
Wow, that's a great connection. Would you say that one has to be really living this profound life and involved in profound activities to be doing this work? Or can we be doing this work with our everyday,
yes,
check off things like doing the dishes and, gassing up the car?
Yes, doing the dishes and gassing up the car, yes. Those should be profound experiences.
Okay. To share a little bit more about that.
Well, because
I agree with you, but yeah.
We again, speaking about evolution, self-awareness, in the history, we had this split between what's secular, what's spiritual, what's inner, what's outer. We are trained this way to have those two worlds separated. During the week you work, and then on Sunday you rest, or you don't think about work, you think about God or church or whatever other activities, and it's like kind of separated, two worlds. And it needs to be all blended together. We are not suddenly not spiritual people when we go to work, or suddenly we are those weird creatures that's supposed to forget about everything and be holy on Sunday. No, I mean, it worked for some time, okay, but now I think it all wants to be blended together. So, or sometimes when people ask about meditation, oh, I don't have time for meditation. Oh, or when I go to meditation and I do meditation, I feel so great. And oh my gosh, I just want to stay there forever. But then I have to deal with my husband again, or I have to go to work and deal with work that I don't like too much. And suddenly they are not spiritual anymore. They are in a world of problems. And what should happen is those two areas in us should blend into one. So you are in the state meditation all the time, meaning that that's just by default.
Yeah, I feel like we're at a point now where that programming, to me, I call it programming. Mm-hmm. People are developing a self-awareness that we're actually have this programming that it is. And it feels like it's starting to dissolve. And I think people out there, folks are feeling it's starting to dissolve, but they don't quite get all the pieces to it all or what it looks like. So well said. It all needs to be integrated together. So someone may not know exactly that's what they're doing, but they're feeling that something's different. They know something different is happening because the programming is dissolving and changing.
Yeah, so then you drive a car, you pull weeds in your garden, or you wash the dishes, and you are present. You are present in the meditation. It's not separated anymore. And then when you are present all the time, meaning in the meditative state, you see things better, your awareness expanded more, and then you can figure it out things better, and you can make better decisions because it's right on the point when you're present, because you're connected, you're aware. It should be all the time, not only when we meditate or go to some service.
It should be a way of life, part of who we are.
Yes, exactly. The observer is all the time there.
I think we're getting there. I think I do believe that there's more recognition of oh yes, it should be that. So now we're in the how do we get from the should be that, right?
Yes.
And then you just gave perfect examples of how you just integrate this into part of your everyday life, where it comes to a point where you're not consciously going through the act saying, oh, I'm doing the dishes. This is a meditative state for me. It is.
Yeah, for example, you washing the dishes, and when you are present, you are so present with those dishes that you actually hear the water. You feel the water on your hands. You feel the smooth surface of the plate. you hear the sound of the fork and, when you wash them. It's meditation when you do it. And for now, when it's not a habit, people have to do it consciously or try to remind themselves to do it. But then when you practice and practice and practice, it becomes like so normal. You don't even know you do it. It's just there.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, well, I wouldn't say how do we balance the experience of a unity consciousness, the oneness? There's a lot of attention being given to oneness and the acknowledgement and the recognition of it, while still honoring our unique individual path.
Let's have a definition of what oneness is first. What is oneness? What is it?
To me, consciousness and oneness is everything is one. The chair in the room, you, the computer, it's all energy and it's all vibration. And we're all energy and we're all vibration. We just look different than the other.
Yeah.
It's oneness. I mean, I guess you could break oneness down different ways, like consciousness and human. But to me, it's like everything exists as got an existence and some kind of consciousness.
Well, but now I'm thinking how to explain it in the everyday, mundane life.
Yeah, you do it a lot better than I do.
Well, I can try. I'm thinking as I go, because we are in the physical world, and in the physical world, you cannot be one with everything. You have to make choices, right? And you choose something that it's supportive, that you need, that it's relevant to you, and you put aside something that is irrelevant to you, because why paying attention to it when you don't need it in the moment, for example. So how to reconcile the oneness of everything and choice?
I mean, we are unique expressions of creator consciousness, all that is, whatever term people want to use, but we're still part of the whole.
Yes. So I think on the very surface of Earth, where we have to walk and go to work and go to store. So, for example, I go to supermarket and I need few things, and let's say I need a juice. So I go to a aisle with juices and drinks and everything, and I see, let's say, 35 different products, 35 different juices, and I need only one. Let's say I need apple juice. So that's the only one that I pay attention to. And I don't pay attention to all the other 24 different juices. So on that level, being one with everything that is on that shelf, the 25 juices, I don't fight the other ones. Meaning, I just accept that they are. I don't need to give attention to them. It doesn't mean I don't love them or I don't like them or something. I ignore them because they did something to me. They are just irrelevant. So I acknowledge that they exist, but I don't want anything from it. And if right by the apple juice there is a, let's say, grape juice, and I don't like grape juice, I don't have to hate the grape juice just because I don't like it. And I don't have to give attention to it when I need apple juice. So I buy the apple juice, I give this apple juice attention, and everything else, I just acknowledge that it's needed, that somebody else may like it or need it, and I don't. So I can feel one with the grape juice by acknowledging what it is, that I don't like it, and I don't mind it. I mean, it's translating it into very, very practical everyday existence, how to be one with everything when everything is separated by different form. So I don't have to hate something that I don't need. I don't have to not like something I don't need, or I don't have to deny something that is irrelevant in my life. Why give it attention? So I am one with it by keeping it neutral when it's not needed. So I need only apple juice, and I give attention to apple juice. I put the apple juice in my cart, and I go, and I'm with peace with all other juices I didn't like or need. So that's oneness on a very practical level. Of course, on quantum level, we can go into energies and everything, but how to practice it when you go to store. It's theory. You can feel it on a spiritual level when you really expand and meditate.
People are really interested in the quantum. They're very curious. I think curiosity, we're in a time of existence where curiosity is really very pivotal. Yeah. So anything you want to share about the quantum, I will tell you, people who listen to this show are always interested and curious.
Well, I don't know anything, not much. I mean, I listen to Nassim Haramein sometimes because he's a really cool physicist that talks about a lot of consciousness and quantum physics, but I don't know much about theory. But when we dive with my friend into, when we do our research and we dive into the depths of the structure of awareness and consciousness and whatever the depths are, I think we arrive at some point at quantum level, because the only thing that we see is light and structures. It's like a foundation of what is. There's no life there. There's no, I mean, life as we understand life here, organisms and complex forms. It's just like energetic DNA. I think it's happening on quantum level because there's only structures kind of built of light.
Well, that makes sense. Just even when you said the term energetic DNA, I was like, I like that.
Yeah. It's like going deeper, and you go through the different layers. There's matter, the physical reality, then there's emotional, then there's even more kind of what we call spiritual. It's more ethereal. Then you go deeper and it's darkness, and then the darkness, there are structures of light, and there are feelings, sounds sometimes, and it's going deeper, and there's a foundation where there's only blackness.
Okay, so are those the 6 steps that you were talking about before?
No.
Okay.
No, the 6 step, no, good connection. The 6 steps is, well, you go on a deeper level when you work on those 6 steps, but the 6 steps are supposed to turn your conscious awareness inward and connect with the essence.
Okay.
So first you go deeper, but then you go this way to connect to your own self.
I'm just fascinated as you were talking, and how you were getting more into the structure of the light and probably the more realistic composition of our existence versus this dense physicalness that we have. So that's like super cool. That's what I'll say on that.
Mm-hmm.
Many spiritual teachings, they say love is the ultimate healer. From your perspective, how does love, self-love, universal love, really play a role in deep transformation?
Well, that's absolutely fundamental. Yes, but again, my mind is kind of like working in the engineer mode. So yes, I see the human experience, but then immediately my mind goes deeper and wants to see the gears under the human experience. So how I see love from that perspective is that love means flow. When things flow, we are in love. When things are stuck, we are not in the flow, we are not in love, we are in some kind of drama. So the energy that builds everything, it must flow all the time. It must flow like emotions on a more human level. Underneath, there's energies that they have to flow. And when things flow and everything is in harmony, complex systems are in harmony, and there's a flow of information, flow of energy, flow of attention, flow of everything. It's all good, and that's what love is. Love is when you are in love, things flow underneath. So going to the inherence process also, it restores the flow. So on a deeper level, when you go and when you release the bad attachments you have to things that are completely not yours and irrelevant to your well-being, you restore actually the flow, because the moment your conscious awareness connects to the essence, there's flow restored, and people really feel flow happening in the body. Suddenly they feel like they are brighter inside because the light starts flowing. And sometimes they even get hot because the flow is so present in the body that you get really warm. In human experience, when we feel the love most strongly, for example, when, let's say, there are two people who are in relationship, and any kind of relationship. I'm not talking about husband and wife, but friends and whatever the relationship is. And suddenly, and they have connection, and they have the flow. And suddenly something happened to one person. For example, this one person had an accident. So suddenly there is a fear that this person will no longer be here. So there won't be flow anymore. And so the person goes to the hospital, the other person, and waits for the surgeon to come out and give the news. And the surgeon comes out and says, well, he's awake. The surgery went well. He's awake. You can go and visit. And suddenly there's this flow because the connection is restored. And you go to visit the person and you hug the person and you say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're alive. I love you so much. I will never do something, or I will always pay attention to something. Because the flow is restored, or the connection is restored, and then immediately you feel stronger love because you are aware of the flow again.
Wow, you have given some really, really good, tangible examples. I really appreciate it. You talked about the gut and the gut brain, which is really important. So for me, there's actually three brains. I think there's the gut brain. I think we have a heart brain. And then we have this one that creates me on my problems. How can people learn to trust their intuition and recognize guidance from a higher consciousness? You had mentioned before, just it was really important, to trust that was pivotal. And, trust is a big issue, right? We see it all over the place. It's a core issue. What would you say to help people feel more comfortable with trusting that intuition and recognizing that guidance does come from something bigger than us?
I think where the trust gets broken is when we are children and we are all open and trusting. Just by design, children trust everything they see and they believe everything they see. When there's something going on in the family structure or cultural structure that the child cannot feel safe and must turn control, then when the trust is lost. So for example, when there's some tragedy going on in the family, some dysfunction, let's say, whatever the dysfunction is, and the child doesn't feel safe, then the trust is broken and the child immediately wants to control the situation. So, for example, the parents argue or they fight, and it's very unpleasant for the child, and the child doesn't feel secure and safe. So the child immediately wants to do something to control the parents, right? To try to do something so they stop. Those are moments when we lose trust and develop control, the control of the mind. Oh, I have to do something. I have to intervene. I have to control the situation, because only when I control the situation, I will be safe and everything will be okay. So those are the moments when we don't feel safe, we immediately want to control. If everything is okay and the child feels safe and acknowledged for who the kid is, then the child learns how to trust the world. Well, the world, meaning the first world in the child's life is the immediate family. The home is the world first. And now when we are adult and we try to rebuild the trust, then we have to release all the trauma where we didn't feel safe and we had to develop the control. The mind is the one that is controlling, but it's not supposed to control the outside world. It's just a calculator that needs to pay attention to the gut, where the real brain is, that is connected to all that is. And it needs to turn down, meaning literally turn down, pay attention to what's inside in the gut, in the feeling part, learn from it, calculate it, then make right decisions. But when the conscious mind is developing constantly in the position, not paying attention to own experience, but to the outside drama, it's not connected to the gut. It's connected to everything that is outside and wants to control it. It can't. So we have to release and work on all traumas and dramas that we had in childhood, those moments that we lost trust in the world, in ourselves, and in the higher power, whatever the higher power is, the universe, God, whoever believes what. Once you feel the flow restored within your own system, then you immediately trust, because there is peace and there is trust that everything is literally okay. Nothing needs to be controlled except your own inner world that needs to be regulated. And the heart is very interesting too, because I think, well, it's from my research. You don't have to believe me or quote me, but how I see it in the research, how it appears. When the system is well integrated, meaning you have the nice flow between your mind, your heart, and your gut. Let's put it generally in those three parts. There are more parts, but those three are most known. When there's a nice flow between those three, the job of the heart is to connect, right? When you think about it, you connect with your heart to others, right? But the first job of heart is to connect the pieces inside. Not to connect to outside world, not to connect to mommy or to husband or to children or to God or to whatever. No, and no again. The first job of the heart is to connect all the pieces within this whole internal system. So when you are connected through the heart, your mind connects to the heart connects to the gut, then you are a real human, who is aware, compassionate, connected, empathetic, and everything, because you have all this mechanism, you have well functioning in your own system. But what happens in trauma, the mind suddenly doesn't want to connect to the gut and doesn't want to know what it is because it doesn't trust it. So it's turned outside and wants to control everything outside. The heart does the same. The heart is desperate because the heart wants to connect. It's the primal job to connect. It cannot connect to the mind because the mind said, no, I want to control everything outside. I'm not interested in what's inside in the inner world. So the heart wants to connect. So the heart too turns outside and wants to connect to everything outside, but it can't, because the heart cannot connect to anything outside. Well, I know it sounds crazy, but
I love this conversation.
The only connection, the real connection, an energetic connection that exists, it's from the gut. The gut is connected to the whole world, not the heart. And then when everything is well integrated inside, the heart is connected only to the gut and to the brain, to the mind. So the gut receives the information from outside, from the universe, from everything. It comes through the gut. Then it goes through the heart. It's processed in a human way. Then it goes to the brain, the information, and the brain processes in the intellectual way. And then everything is working in sync. And then you have the proper response, human, healthy response. When the heart cannot connect the internal pieces, but it wants to connect to something, it will connect to anything outside, and it will always, and again, always will cause emotional drama.
Actually, that makes sense. So really, to be whole and have a wholeness is when it's clicking.
Yes.
That way. Okay.
Yes.
And you that makes sense with the emotion and the drama. You honestly see that all the time.
Yeah.
Let's just real quick touch on separation.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about spiritual traditions. Many say that separation's an illusion. People have a hard time wrapping their head around that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help people move past the feeling of isolation into a state of interconnectedness? So it's sort of like you gave the physical mechanic explanation of this.
Yes, I do. I don't explain when I work with people. I don't explain it the way like I just did here. We just work practically. meaning the base for everything is to return to, how to say it, not to be afraid of recognizing what you feel, because the feeling is the primal information that we have inside. And so we have to be connected with our own feeling part to be connected and integrated and not separated. The separation, it is an illusion in a way that mechanically we are not separated. We are connected in a twisted way mechanically, which gives the illusion of separation. So let's say the heart wants to connect to your inner child, to your gut and to your brain, to your conscious mind, but it cannot because let's say the system is broken. It's not aligned.
And that's what's going to create that sense of isolation then.
Yes. So, for example, this heart wants to connect. So it connects, for example, to your husband or to your child. And then you're getting back the connection through the other person. So it is connected, but it's connected in an entangled way. And it will always create drama. So technically, it's not completely broken and isolated and disconnected, but it's connected so in a twisted way that the energy flows in a weird way, and that's why we are so confused and have emotional drama, because it's not clean and straight. When I work with people on a feeling of disconnection is actually again connecting to your own deeper self. I had this other article on my blog about loneliness. It's the same as uniqueness. Because when you are unique and there's nobody else like you, that's lonely. If there's nobody else like you, when you think really about it, you are unique. There is nobody else like you in the whole universe. Wow. But now what? When we are disconnected from ourselves, meaning we pay attention to everything else, we are incapable of embracing the uniqueness. And when you cannot embrace and acknowledge uniqueness, it turns into feeling of loneliness and separation. It's not. It's again, turn your attention where it's supposed to go, embrace the uniqueness, and suddenly you're not lonely, you are full of the universe. So it's all about how you turn the attention. The same thing will be drama and tragedy, and the same thing will be your biggest joy.
Well, you're right. It is very simple when you explain it. So someone's on the path of their self-discovery but feels lost. What advice would you give them from both the psychological and spiritual standpoint?
Depends where the person is and what they need. Do they need EFT? Do they need a therapy? Do they need to connect to somebody? Do they need some kind of help? Or, well, I'll say, hey, do EFT and release some emotions and see how you feel. And when you feel a little bit more connected to yourself, then you'll see that nothing is lost. It's just misinformation. It's misplaced.
So one step chips away and puts you on where the next journey is to.
Exactly.
Okay.
The feeling of being lost, it's actually mean that people are not rooted in themselves. And it's again going back to the connection to the deeper self, because it is the root, it is the foundation of functioning. So when you feel lost, it means that you are not connected to, you are not rooted in your own self, in your own soul, in your own essence. Or sometimes when people have, I have this need to belong to somewhere, and I feel so alone in this world because I don't belong to any family or any group or any nation or whatever. Those are only external interpretations, excuses of the mind, not excuses, but understandings of the mind of the one feeling of not belonging to your own self. That's the only thing that you need to belong to and can belong to. Then belonging, so-called, to some kind of organization or group or family, it's not even belonging, it's just living your life. It's not a source of your belonging because you belong to your own deep self, your soul.
Okay.
Well, that's how I see it. Mm-hmm.
I'm liking it. If listeners would like to work with you or understand a little bit more of what you do, how would they connect with you? And what would that look like?
There is a website called katarzynadad.com. there is a contact form. I do inherent sessions. I used to do individual sessions, but now I do a session like a program. It's like 2-month program, and it's called Inherence Program. And we go through different steps and try to reconnect with the deeper self. There will be workshops. I'm working on that. I'm doing Inherence workshops right now in Polish. They are really, really something else. Well, with my friend, we both are teachers in those workshops. And the results that people get, oh my gosh, sometimes it's like, is it really happening?
Nice.
Because people giving us feedback, it's like, wow, it's really something else. They do a few times the process, and they feel like after 40 years of meditation, literally, it's like a straight to the core connection. That, and then we are working on developing application. The application will be also very, very interesting because it will be doing EFT exercises. There will be programs for different specific topics, and that should be done this year, maybe summertime. It should be ready, and it will be really helpful we are testing it right now, and I think it will be really helpful for people to have something like this. It will be super easy and accessible, right in your pocket, and it will help you a lot in the moment when you feel emotional or lost or something comes up, and
Okay, I'll make sure I get all that information up on the website also for you. Any last thoughts before we finish?
I would like to encourage people to turn inside. Turn inside, explore what's in there, because everything is there. Everything that is needed is in there. And the more we reconnect with the deeper self, the more whole we feel, the more harmonious life we have with others and in the world. The more synchronicities happen, the life becomes easier and effortless more and more. So whatever the method is, whatever the way and path to do it, just turn inside and reconnect and know yourself and know yourself and know yourself and know yourself better and better. It will produce results.
Awesome. It's a beautiful journey. Enormous gratitude for all your wisdom and insights today. And truly, thank you for all that you're doing for everyone out there. You're making a difference in the world. You're making a difference for humanity. So definitely appreciate that. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be on the show, Keisha.
Thank you so much.
And for all you listeners out there, a big thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Until next time, remember, embrace that wild soul. Thanks again, Keisha.
Thank you so much for inviting me and spending time with me and allowing me to share all this with your audience.
Yeah, your work is awesome, truly awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wild Soul Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To learn more about our guests, please go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We're very eager to hear from our listeners what you thought of the episode, topics you might like us to cover in the future, your thoughts on spirituality, questions you may have. Please feel free to send us an email at wildsoulsgathering@gmail.com. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.